me. Just remind me to, like, speak up, and then I will, like, try. I don't usually sound like this. 2 years ago, I wrote a post on my personal blog about the decision to change my name. I was adopted in 1976, and my parents, they named me Mary Ann because they said that was in the Bible. I haven't found it. And then my dad's last name was Edgett, which he claimed that he could trace his family back to the Mayflower, so it was a very English name. And I never felt like a Mary Ann Edgett or a Mary or Mare, any of that. So finally, 2 years ago, I decided to change my name legally, which is like so easy to do in the States. In Europe, it's really hard to do, I've heard, but here you just pay a fee and you fill out some papers and that's it. In fact, you don't even have to do all that. You can just start calling yourself your chosen name, and after a period of time, that's as good as it. But I wrote an article on my personal blog about the experience and why I had done it. And I wasn't really able at the time to articulate it to people who asked me, why did you make this decision? So finally, when I could, I sat down and wrote about it. And then I submitted what I wrote to a website called 8asians.com. Are you familiar with that website? Different people from the Asian American community submit to it different articles about things that are thought to be relevant. And what happened kind of surprised me. It was just a pretty personal piece about, one person's decision to go by a name that felt more authentic, even though it was just, I don't even know where Chunsoon came from. I don't know if it was like a foster mother made that decision to call me that, or I don't know if it was like my temporary orphan name. Yes? Oh, were you going to ask a question? Okay. Or what? I don't really know where it came from, but it was a name that I came over with, and my adoptive parents kept it as my middle name, which I thought was pretty neat of them, but it wasn't enough because no one was calling me that, and I just really felt like I was in the wrong skin as Mary. So I'm going to start by reading what I originally wrote, and then what surprised me was on that website there ensued this melee about just that one personal decision. What I did write, it did touch on some of the feelings and thoughts I was having about international adoption at that time, sort of making the personal political, or like enlarging it into like a political conversation. But there were like over 160 comments. It became a little bit of a flame war on that website. And I have since spoken to the owner of that website, Ernie, and he told me that was the largest argument on his site since its inception, which surprised me because they talk about, like celebrities and weird, vapid stuff that people tend to like to talk about. And so I thought this would make a good conversation for us because that argument touches on a lot of the key issues surrounding international transracial adoption. Just let me know when it's ready. And, although maybe I don't need it. And,
I'll make it happen.
Okay. And then what I have here I just picked some of the key comments. We're not going to go through all 163 of them. And at some point early on, this person who identified himself as Kim, first we thought Kim was a woman, but then turned out that Kim was an adoptive father who had he married into a Chinese family and adopted 2 Chinese girls. He sort of became my heckler/doppelganger. He was it was good. I actually appreciated his comments. They were rude and very intrusive, but they also brought out a lot of the issues that I was talking about and wanted to have a conversation about. Okay, so I'm going to read with this video. If I can get it to work. I don't know if any of you, when you were growing up, if you were adopted, went to any kind of cultural camps or anything like, Korean cultural camps or anything like that. In Rochester, where I grew up, there wasn't anything like that in the late 70s, but I went to a Korean church. There was a Korean church, and I went there once a year for this event called Agapa Day, and it was when my parents would take me there and dress me up in a hanbok, and like I got to eat mandus and feel Korean for a day. And I made a friend there, and we became really good friends, and from that point on, she sort of smuggled me these cassette tapes of these Korean pop stars from the 70s and 80s. And this guy is I grew up with him, even though I can't understand any of his songs, which is kind of sad. Okay. Sitting down in a chair the other day, a funny thing happened. I turned a year older. It got me thinking about my name. 6 months earlier, I had handed over some papers and a check for $200. Just like that, I became Chunsoon Li. So, like a blanket of snow that falls on our city, or a cool spoon pressed on the eyes, I applied a new name, though a very old name, to myself. If I was given a name at birth, it's gone with the woman who could say it. There was a day. It was raining. That's how I'll tell it. On this day, I wandered off from my mother, or was placed in a basket like a little yellow Moses, or left behind in one of the ways it happens, just like that. I was about a year old and didn't know anything. She was a young woman, as I've always seen her, beautiful despite the day. Did she hold me one last time? Did she pray for us? Adoption is many things. It's commonplace, it's a dream come true for some, and it's an efficient way to deal with a surplus of orphans. During the Korean War, transnational adoption solved the embarrassing problem of biracial children sired by Western soldiers. These children, thousands of them, were the scar tissue of the wounds of war, represented the double blight of mixed race and illegitimacy. Their unmarried mothers bore the brunt of this stigma. In 1956, a zealous American named Harry Holt formed the Holt International Adoption Agency in an effort to harvest the seed from the East, as prophesied in Isaiah 45, verse 3. By the 1960s, war babies were replaced with a new supply of orphans, byproducts of South Korea's brutal push to industrialize. But I want to speak to the heart of the matter. The status of women is the status of children in society. Don't let the guys in charge tell you otherwise. In Korea, divorced women, raped women, and unwed mothers all face the same stigma of being deeply sullied. There is no social support system which helps them survive in Korean society, much less provide for their children. To date, there have been over 150,000 Korean children sent out of country as adoptees, 2/3 of them to the U.S. This industry nets Korea between $15 to $20 million per year, which is to say that selling off your unwanted children is more lucrative than caring for them or implementing systemic changes that would keep families together in the first place. In the past 15 years, we've seen 17 nations call an end to transnational adoption due to charges of exploitation, coercion of birth mothers, abduction, and child trafficking. This contrasts sharply against the shining picture of an integrated American family with Asian kids, which is the image in the whole catalogs. When children are sent out of country, they are sent west. They are sent to white families who mean well, and they are given new names. People have always had their own names for me: Mary, Mao, Pumpkin, Slowpoke. Identity for an adoptee is the feeling that nothing is yours by birthright. At times, there's a freedom to this, an untetheredness that is nice. Mostly, though, it just feels weird. My adoptive parents saved my life, and they did it with Christian love in their hearts. They even retained my temporary Korean name, Chunsoon, as my middle name. 6 months ago, I reclaimed it, this one piece of my mother's land that I do have. I chose the family name Li, also spelled Yi, Ri, Li, an ordinary commonplace name, a typical Korean name. Confucius be damned, I am now the beginning of my bloodline in this country. So say my name, family and friends. Say my name, Chagya, as no one else can. because nothing ever just happens just like that. Please say my name.